Hello and welcome. Today I have something challenging to me personally. Mike Al New York, that's what he goes by on YouTube. Mike Al New York made a comment under one of my videos, and he said, I see multiple tarot books. I have books behind me. I don't encourage actively, but I like it when people notice what's behind me. And they comment on it because it gives me an opportunity to address some of my personal interests, maybe some interests that we share in common. So Mike notices that there are a number of tarot books behind me. And he says, can you please do a video on the best books for the psychic entertainer? Now, I was personally challenged by that question in a way that I don't think Mike knows that I would be challenged. I have not done a video on the tarot. I have not addressed the tarot. In my mind, there are two different worlds. There's the world of mentalism, there's the world of magic, and then there's the world of the tarot, or the world that I associate with the tarot. As you can see, I pulled out some of the books that I own on the tarot. These are all books that I own on the tarot. I have a number of others that are not here. I'm going to share a few with you, but there's some groundwork that I'd like to do before I address the issue. Mike says, can you please do a video on the best books for the psychic entertainer? The first thing I'd like to share with you is this. If you're going to go into psychic entertainment, you want to make a decision in your heart of hearts. You want to decide if you're a real psychic or if you're not. If you're an entertainer, if you're primarily just an entertainer. Now, I know what 90% of you are going to say right away. You're going to say, David, there's no such thing as a psychic. Because most of the magic community is skeptical of psychic things. Personally, I'm not. I believe in the genuinely psychic, and the tarot, in my opinion, falls into the area of the genuinely psychic. But more than that, the tarot is associated with a religious practice and with a religious ideology. Now let me just share a few things about that. As performers, as a mentalist and as a magician and as an illusionist, I tried to avoid stepping on toes religiously. I know some performers, like Randy, some performers do it on purpose. They just believe that there's no such thing, and so they tread on people's feet intentionally. I'm not one of those people. I have a great deal of respect for religion and for religious history and for religious ideologies. And so I try to be very respectful of that. Let me tell you a quick story. So I'm doing an illusion show. This is many, many years ago. It was in the 1990s. I'm doing an illusion show. One of the featured effects of my show, and at the time I was enamored with Native American culture and Native American history. So a lot of my presentations had a Native American bend to them. I did a Loda Bowl, for example, telling a Native American story to illustrate. And I had a sword cabinet that was custom made for me by a guy named Mark Steyer. And I did a ghost dance presentation. Now the idea behind the ghost dance was that you could do this dance and you would be impervious to bullets or to injury. It is believed that the Crazy Horse did the dance at the Battle of Little Bighorn, and it was one of the decisive things that won the battle for the Sioux. So I did this presentation, conjuring up the ghost dance imagery and ideology for this particular presentation. After one of my shows, a fellow magician came back who happened to be a Native American. And he said, did you know that the ghost dance is an active religion? I sort of did, I did. And he said, I'd appreciate it if you didn't use that particular presentation when you're doing this, because I'm actually a practitioner, and he raised some objections. So I stopped immediately. And when you begin to get into the area of psychic entertainment, you're moving into an ideological realm where religion and philosophy and ideologies very much overlap. And so you have to be, I think you need to be very intentional about what you're doing. In my own self-evaluation, I've decided, and in my own exploration and personal bent, I've decided that there's something sacred here. And so I treat it as sacred. Now let me give you, I've avoided doing this. I've been doing this show for 2 years. And I've avoided addressing my personal ideology on purpose because I don't want to offend anyone. We are magicians, and I want us to be united around that. I don't want us to be divided by politics, and I don't want us to be divided by religion. I want us to be united around our passion for the art. So whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, a conservative or a liberal, whether you're Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, Wiccan, whatever your faith, you're welcome here. Whatever your politics, you're welcome here. And so I've avoided exposing my own personal ideology for that reason. But if I'm going to address the subject of the tarot and the subject of psychic entertainment, honestly, I have to reveal something of my personal ideology. So let me set it up with a little bit of personal history. In 1974, when I was 14 years old, I was in a very desperate place, emotionally and psychologically. I won't go into details, but I was in a very desperate place. And as a result of that experience, I became a born again, not just a born again, but a spirit-filled, charismatic, believing Christian. And I was extremely passionate about my faith at the age of 14. I had a pastor named John Cummins that I looked up to, admired, and loved. And growing through my teen years, after devoting my life to Jesus Christ, going through my teen years, there was no one that I admired more or wanted to be like more than John Cummins, my pastor. So I devoted myself to becoming like John Cummins. When I graduated from undergrad, I studied psychology in undergraduate school because I wanted to prepare for ministry. So I studied psychology at Towson University. I met my wife while studying psychology at Towson University. We married, and we journeyed off to seminary. We went to Springfield, Missouri to attend the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary. Let me back up just a second. In undergraduate school at Towson University, my major was psychology. My minor was cultural anthropology. That's very important because it will help you understand why I'm a different sort of a Christian. Most Christians adhere only to their faith and will not necessarily embrace the faith of other traditions. I've always been interested, I've always been curious about other faith traditions and other cultures. And so I've always explored them. And that will help you understand how it is that a Christian can be involved in the tarot and spiritualism and some other things. So I go off to seminary. I'm married. I just got married. We piled everything we owned into an old Oldsmobile that my parents gave us. And we drove from Baltimore to Springfield, Missouri, 2 days after we were married. And we settled in Springfield, Missouri, so I could study and earn my Master of Divinity degree and become a pastor just like John Cummins. Well, I spent 3.5 years in Springfield, Missouri, earning my Master of Divinity, got home and was unable to find a position in ministry. The evangelical community, when it comes to placing people in churches, is not like any other denomination. It's very much, well, I won't get into it. The point is, I was unable to find work in my chosen field. So I ended up having to do other things, which eventually led me to human resources. where I spent 27 years as a human resource professional. As a human resource professional, of course, I had to be and needed to be, and it's the right thing to be, completely open. Your judgments are based on whether or not a person can perform the job. They're not based on a person's faith or a person's convictions or a person's ideology. That has nothing to do with it. And I embrace and I love that value. All that matters is our shared passion. Well, I continued to be curious. The church that I was a part of understood that curiosity and embraced it. And so whenever there was a question or a concern about a local religious movement, they sent me to investigate. That's the kind of person that I am. I investigate. I'm trying to remember the years now. Two things happened more or less simultaneously. I became really good friends with a person who was a reader, a tarot reader. And she began to describe her experiences to me, and naturally I became curious. And so I think it was around 2004, I took a class. This was a New Age bookstore, a local New Age bookstore. They were offering a workshop. It was a 2-day workshop in the tarot. 2 full days, from 9 to 5, 2 full days. So I took this workshop, and turns out I'm a pretty natural tarot reader. I'm a pretty good reader. By 2006, 2007, I was doing readings semi-professionally. Now, I never saw tarot and reading in the same category as mentalism and magic. I just never saw them equated. To me, a reading is a spiritual experience. And so I treat it as something sacred. It's not that I don't treat magic and mentalism as something sacred, but it's in a much different way. Let's put it this way. I believe in the genuineness of the tarot and of readings. And so my approach is going to be drastically different than someone who doesn't. I remember recently there was I belong to magic forums, and there was a friend of mine who was preparing to release something to the magic community based on the tarot, and he asked my opinion, and I said, well, my opinion is it's a bad idea. And it's a bad idea because the tarot is sacred, and you've gimmicked something. You've made a trick out of something that I consider sacred. And he said, I respect your opinion, but that opinion is not shared by the vast majority. And that is absolutely true. So, Mike, I provide that little history to give you some background as to where I'm coming from when I try to answer the question, can you recommend books for a psychic entertainer? Now, if you've made the decision that the psychic is genuine and you want to be genuine, there's a different group of books that you should be reading. If you've made the decision that the psychic is bogus and you want to entertain as a mentalist or some other way like that, then it's a different set of books you should be reading. If you've decided that psychic entertainment is a performing art and only a performing art, there's nothing genuine about it, if that's your decision, then you should be reading Docc Hilford and John Riggs. Now John Riggs actually believes in the psychic. Actually believes, but he makes a distinction between psychic entertainment and the genuine. By the way, in 2011, I went to Lilydale to investigate modern spiritualism. At Lilydale, I was convinced that modern spiritualism was genuine, and I enrolled in the Morris Pratt Institute. The Morris Pratt Institute is the spiritualist version of seminary. I spent several years working through their seminary curriculum, and I graduated. So I'm basically a graduate of 2 different religious schools. The Assemblies of God, which is a Protestant Christian seminary, and the Morris Pratt Institute, which is modern spiritualism. So I am that devoted spiritually to both camps. And the tarot comes out of an entirely different religious camp that I'm not going to delve into too deeply here. If you want more information, by all means talk to me privately, and I will help you navigate that. I'm going to make a few recommendations for reading if you're interested in the tarot. But here's what I'd like to say to you. If you are interested in doing tarot readings, do them for real. There's no reason why you should not. It is just too easy to learn the tarot and to do it as a genuine reader that there's no excuse for doing anything else. And let me digress there for a moment as well. Interested in the tarot as I study. And by the way, this is another important factor. Look at the table. You'll see piles and piles of books. Each one of these books deals with a different aspect of the tarot. This is what I recommend to you. Whatever your interest is, whatever your ideology is, if you've made a decision that you want to learn something, get everything you can put your hands on related to that subject and consume it. Take notes. Make highlights, make drawings inside the book, keep a separate notebook to keep your notes on. Fully immerse yourself in the subject, whether that's performance magic or the tarot or a religious ideology or a scientific investigation. Whatever it is you're interested in, immerse yourself. You will emerge out the other end, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 10 years later, an expert in the area. And that's what you need to be. Why would you go halfway about anything? If you're going to devote time and attention to something, don't hold back. Invest fully. As you can see, that's what I do. Now, I might get down the road and decide, you know what? I don't like this. And back out after 10 years, after 20 years, I might do that. There are some problems with the tarot, and I hope to share those with you. Some people place way too much importance on a reading. I think that's dangerous. You should never, ever make an important life decision based on a tarot reading. Never. Never. And I completely discourage that. If you have faith in God, that's where your faith should be, as opposed to the tarot. The tarot does have a place, and I'm going to try to put it in its place. I know I'm probably giving you much more information than you asked for, but it's important. It's important to get this stuff right if you're going to delve into it. Now, a couple of years back, I was asked to do a seminar on the tarot. And I put together this manuscript here, and when I do a seminar, an instruction as opposed to a performance, I give my audience handouts. And this was the handout that I gave my audience when I was doing, I did a one-day workshop on the tarot. I'd like to share with you some quotations from the introduction to that workshop. The best way to predict the future is to create it. Abraham Lincoln. You are the oracle. Karen Silverwood said you. Now that's really important if you're going to go into this kind of work. What she's saying is that the energy, the power, the insight, the ability to discern, the ability to read your subject, your sitter, is not in the cards. It's in you. You could literally take the cards off the table and do the reading. And I have done that. So you are the oracle, not the cards. It's important that you remember that. The cards are to the oracle what a hammer is to a carpenter. Okay? The carpenter builds the house, not the hammer. You read the cards, not the cards themselves. Tarot is becoming more accepted and understood by the mainstream and is being recognized as a tool of affirmation and self-reflection instead of predicting the future. Talia is the person who said that. The tarot contains a mystical philosophy expressed in pictures. Hermeticism, I believe, is the undergirding philosophy of the tarot. Its text describes how one can find divinity within, and it can be used to open a dialogue with the inner light. Robert Place said that. Tarot isn't about predicting your future, it is about creating your future. Bridget Elzenmont, founder of Biddy Tarot, said that. The cards can provide a focus for our higher selves, allowing them to come to the forefront and supersede our rational and conscious minds. Again, Karen Silverwood. To me, a proper approach to reading is not divination. It's not predicting the future. It's not fortune telling. It's trying to provide insight to a person to help them understand where they are so they can better navigate where they're going. Now, as far as its ability to predict the future, I will tell you that the tarot can do that. The issue, though, is this. What the tarot actually shows you, if you're on a train and the train is on a particular track and the track goes to a particular destination, the tarot will show you where that destination is. However, a person can exercise their free will and step off the train at any juncture and take a different route. That's really important to understand. I don't believe that the future is fixed. I think it depends on your choices. Thus, going back to the original quote from Abraham Lincoln, the best way to predict the future is to create it. So, Mike, let me address your original question. You said, could you please recommend some books? Well, again, if you're going to be a psychic entertainer, a mentalist, a performer in that particular marketplace, marketing yourself as a psychic entertainer, I recommend that you expose yourself to Docc Hilford and John Riggs. These are two psychic entertainers that do a wonderful job, and they've done a great job presenting instruction to the magic community. So I recommend that to you. If you are interested in the tarot, you want to make a serious study of the tarot, here are some things that I recommend to you. The Pictorial Key to the Tarot by author Edward Waite. Author Edward Waite teamed up with a guy named Rider and an artist named Pamela Coleman Smith to create the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, which became the standard bearer for decks at the turn of the last century. It is based on the Rider-Waite that we get many of the other variations that we have today. So this is one of the key pivotal works. I highly recommend it to you as a starting point for the study of the tarot. Then you have the New Tarot Handbook by Rachel Pollack. Rachel Pollack is a name that you want to get really familiar with if you're serious about the tarot. She is a brilliant teacher and guide, and she will help you understand the tarot. The next book is 78 Degrees of Wisdom, a book of tarot by Rachel Pollack. Same person. This book is a must read. If you are going to get into this area, you absolutely must read this book from cover to cover. It will help you to understand where the tarot comes from, how it works, the undergirding philosophy of each card. This will really help you immeasurably. Then you have the Tarot, History, Symbolism, and Divination by Robert Place. I found this indispensable when I was investigating the history of the cards. I think it's important, if you're going to pick something up and use it, that you understand where it came from, and this will help you do that. The other book I highly recommend is Tarot for Dummies. This book was fantastic. It helps you see many connections that some of the more sophisticated books miss, and it's basic. So you shouldn't miss that either. Now, let me. Many of these books over here are books that come with decks. The Witch's Tarot, the Steampunk Tarot. This one is Classic Companion Llewellyn by Barbara Moore. This is the Dreamer's Journal Tarot. This is the Gilded Tarot. So depending on the deck you get, you should be getting a companion volume to go along with that deck. Now, these are two of the decks that I use. I actually have somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 different decks in my collection. When I read, I only use two. I use the Hanson Roberts. That's what this is, Hanson Roberts, and this is actually my favorite deck, and it's based on the Rider-Waite, of course, Rider-Waite Smith. But I find it, what you need to do if you're thinking about getting into this. Here's what I recommend: you buy a number of different decks, you work with them, you read with them, and some decks will gel with you. They'll become part of you more than others, and when that happens, you will have found the deck that's right for you. The other deck that I like to use is called the Witch's Tarot, and that's this deck right here. When I rarely use this deck. This deck is particularly potent, if that makes sense. This deck is the Hanson Roberts is a little more gentle and kind, which is my personality. This deck tends to be a little more direct, which is not my personality. I will use it when I feel that the sitter requires a very direct and very sobering type of reading. Then I will use it. And again, this is a very personal choice here. Now, let me speak for a second about these, the bags that I keep them in. Many of my decks are in the original box that they came in. But the decks that I use to read, I keep in very special bags. These bags were made by a person I discovered on Etsy. She goes by the title of A Well-Appointed Witch, and she handcrafts these bags, and they're just magnificent, as you can see. See the interior of the bag. They're fantastic, and they create a sacred space for the cards, and they were created by someone who understands what that means. So I highly value her work. And by the way, she and I have worked together on a number of projects. She's made a bag for me to carry my linking rings in. She's made other bags that I carry props in. They're very important and special to me because when I get one of her bags, it creates a sacredness about it. And so I keep things in her bags that I want to treat very well and show some respect to. The linking rings, the cups and balls, tarot cards, all have a degree of a sacredness to me. And so I treat them that way. Well, Mike, I don't know if I answered your question. I hope I did. I know this was long-winded, but it was long-winded for a reason. You asked a question that I think is very challenging for me. Not every magician feels the way that I feel about this particular subject. If you ask a different magician, you get a different answer. But you asked me. So to sum up, if you want to do psychic entertaining and you don't care at all about the ideology behind it or the esoteric roots, then study Docc Hilford, study John Riggs. If you do care about the esoteric roots, then take a look at the books I've recommended here. Immerse yourself in the study. Take workshops. Really learn how to do it. And then when you start doing it, do it with a sense of ethics. Do it. Let me just share with you something before I close. let me share with you something before I close. I'm going to give you some ethical guidelines for reading. Okay, now let me give you some real life examples here. People will come to you and they will ask you about potential mates. They will ask you about health conditions. They will ask you about career choices. You need to be really careful about that. Okay, my recommendation is don't go there. They need to see it. If they have a medical condition, they need to consult a doctor, period. Send them to a doctor. If they're looking to you to help them decide who to date or whether or not to get a divorce or something like that, send them to a counselor. If they need career choice, send them to a career counselor. Don't get into that stuff. That is naturally what people want to do. I think it's very dangerous territory to tread there. I don't like it. I don't like it, and I discourage it. So here are some guidelines. This, again, Karen Silverwood. What you see in the cards are challenges and opportunities, not unyielding truth. Let your clients know this. I think if you just learn that one sentence, you have the essence of ethical reading. Okay, I'm going to lay the cards out here. We're going to look at some opportunities. We're going to look at some challenges that are in your life right now. What you do with those is your business. Okay. What is an ethical tarot reader? Someone who actually cares about the well-being of her client. That's from Bridget Elsenmont. Temper honesty with sensitivity. Karen Silverwood. By the way, Karen Silverwood was one of my instructors. That's why her quotes are here so much. And then I didn't recommend this to you before, but I want to recommend it now. The American Tarot Association does have a formal code of ethics. The American Tarot Association, go ahead and Google that. Go to their website if you're interested. Take a look at that code of ethics. Anyway, folks, that's my 2 cents on psychic entertaining and specifically the tarot. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please comment down below. Please subscribe. I know this was very different than what you're used to from me. I hope that I haven't offended anyone. I don't want to, it's not my purpose to do that. As I said, I embrace everyone of every faith, of every political ideology. You're welcome here. What binds us together is our passion for magic. Thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe if you have not done so already. Please comment down below. Negative, positive. I want to hear what you have to say and I will respond to it. Thank you so much. Have a good day.